last of the series of talks on practice in Chennai. Today, we have invited 5 firms with different approaches to practice to share what they think and what they have done. Some of them have been trained as architects, but have successfully branched to allied areas. Some have continued with the core domain of design. Through their work, they seem to have some answers to questions such as size, success, and roles of professionals. Let us hear them out. Srivatsan will be moderating the talk, and the panel today includes Kavita Mohanraj, a design entrepreneur specialized in the field of computational design, industrial design, and advanced manufacturing. Combined 12 years of experience in designing and product development and 8 years in the field of 3D printing, she is driven to empower the use of technology in creative industries. Kavita is also an ambassador at Women's 3D Printing, international organizations which promotes, supports, and inspires women into additive manufacturing. She loves to explore the intersection of design, technology, and manufacturing, creating an innovative cross-disciplinary platform that embraces values of digital insertion and diversity. Vidya Mohan Kumar is an architect and urban designer with 17 years of work experience in India, Ireland, and United States. Vidya received master's degree in urban design with a distinction from the University of Michigan and a bachelor's degree in architecture from the National Institute of Technology, Tiruchirappalli. Her work is focused on creating cities that are people-oriented and centered around transit as a part of sustainable development agenda that she is passionate about. In 2011, Vidya founded Urban Design Collective, a collaborative platform for architects, urban designers, and planners to create livable cities through participatory planning. She has also been involved in several strategic planning projects, regional plans, local area plans, campus master plans, and urban design studies for existing developments in various cities around the world. In addition, she also mentors projects in Hubli and Agartala as a national expert on public space design with the National Institute of Urban Affairs. Arun Kartik is a founder and managing director of Design Cube, a 10-year-old design consultancy. After working full-time in design and business development for the first 5 years, Arun found his calling outside the scope of built environment. While he still actively manages Design Cube, he stopped getting involved in projects since 2015 and focused on teaching business development to his peers. Since then, he has created a scalable design practice, which has expanded to multiple cities doing residential, corporate, and institutional design projects. Currently, Arun leverages his knowledge of user experience design in building digital products for enterprise business needs. One of the products he built is Workfolio, which has been productivity tracking tool originally built for the internal needs of Design Cube, now being used by 3,000 companies. Sriram Ganapathy graduated with a Thomson Gold Medal for BR from IIT Roorkee and selected to the Dean's Honor List, a mark from McGill University, Canada. Sriram has been an integral part of KSM Consultants and KSM Architecture since its inception and has been working towards energy efficient and climatically relevant architecture through their firm KSM. Their climatically relevant projects have won national and international acclaim. As one of the founding trustees of Chennai Architecture Foundation, he has been organizing architectural talks and events in Chennai for the betterment of architectural profession, architectural education, and for the betterment of city of Chennai. The firm KSM was voted one among the top 50 architectural practices in the country in 2011. Biju Kuriakose co-founded Architecture Red, an architecture and urban design firm based out of Chennai. Having studied architecture in Mumbai, Biju received his master's degree in architecture and urban design from Pratt Institute, New York. Prior to founding Architecture Red, Biju was an associate at FX Fowl Architects, a leading architectural planning and urban design firm based out of New York. Biju has been invited to several prestigious forums, including Metropolitan Waterfront Alliance, New York, Pratt Institute, and Columbia University, New York, as a speaker and a studio critic. He also currently teaches at School of Architecture and Planning, Anna University, as an external studio critic. I welcome all the panel, and now let me hand it over to Srivatsan to take over the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone, for joining this fourth. I hope there is not much background noise. I'm in a very peculiar place trying to moderate this. So I hope the background noise is not so disturbing. This is the fourth and the last of the series, which we call Practicing in Chennai. We started in April. Uh, First was broadly talking about current challenges and opportunities. It was more a sort of a roundtable format. Then we had the second one between young and senior practitioners. And the third was particularly focusing on paying practice. Today, what we thought was invite five practices. Three of them are in the core architecture practice. When I say core, I mean the mainstream as that we now know. But have done some changes, some innovations, which when I first heard, I thought was quite interesting and something that we can sort of discuss. And the two others, they are architects, but they are in the allied fields, trying to look at different kinds of engagements. And increasingly, architects are thinking of looking beyond their core practice of building design service. So it will be good to hear them as well. So generally, practices in India, sort of statistics that I came across was that most of the firms are less than 20 or maybe even 15, and this is categorized as small firms. And to me, this signifies one, diversity of practice, two, substantial patronage for small firms, upward movement of architects from employees to firm partners, etc. But it also shows the market is fragmented. But it also exposes certain kind of vulnerabilities, I'm assuming. One, for example, can small firms cope up with a crisis such as pandemic? Are they agile? How are they able to solicit more projects? How are they able to survive tough procurement practices and so on? So I would first open this question asking each one of you, given the small nature of their practice, uh, how did you cope up with the current crisis? This is something that we have been talking in all the four meetings so far, because the context is the post-pandemic. Two, it's also we're trying to create a contemporary record of how architects responded to these situations. So, could I begin by asking, what have you done? How did you cope up with this challenge? Have you made some changes to your course? Do you think these changes are temporary or permanent? Can I begin by asking Arun if he can come in and say what was the impact of this crisis on your practice, and what changes have you done to it, and how do you look at it as something temporary or something permanent?
You're on mute, Arun.
I'm sorry about it. Hi, everyone. Let me give a small intro about Design Cube in the perspective of the current topic. So it's a 10-year-old firm. We started going multi-location, say 5 years back. We've had offices in Jaipur. Right now, we have offices in Bangalore, Coimbatore, and Chennai. So when we were expecting lockdown to happen, we actually started working remote even before the lockdown happened. We were like even if we had no idea the government was going for a lockdown, but just to be on the safer side, we started working remote. Say it happened to be just 2 weeks before the actual lockdown happened. But what gave us an advantage was we had enough time to prepare. We had some like internal systems that we built during those 2 weeks. We had a 2 week trial time where we were together to decide on how to. So our main objective was to make sure work doesn't get disturbed for our existing clients. That was our single main objective. And at that point of time, we were 120 people office. For me, it was personally a challenge on how to make sure everyone is doing their part. It's working from home is never heard of in design industry, and if I'm going to get into it at once with 120 employees, I have to find a way to make sure things are going well. I personally would call myself more of an engineer than an architect. Like my thought process always revolves around how do I make a system better. And I have some curiosity in tech which keeps me going and which but thankfully I've always used those curiosity to channel some development towards Design Cube. And similarly, we started building a tool to make sure our internal communications were more streamlined. Like there were systems to for people to say what they were doing on a daily basis, and there was a system to track the productivity of people. We were mainly focused on retaining the autonomy of people. We didn't want to completely dictate what has to happen while they're working from home. So I started building a system based on that approach, and it kind of really helped to an extent where it is we made that into a product today, and there are people using that product to make sure their teams are productive when they work from home. So this is from the productivity part of the employees. From the business side, our main challenge was work stopped at site. We do design as well as project management. We do end-to-end support. We don't do contracting, but we do end-to-end support in terms of project management. So we take up schedule on our part. We take up the quality on our part. So that was a big blow. Having one arm completely not functional created an imbalance, and every day was a constant thought whether I should downsize, and I didn't want to let go of good employees who did nothing wrong. And it was a tough phase, at least for the first 8-9 months. And so the major change was we built systems to adapt into bringing in new projects, working with existing clients, working with existing working with our own employees remotely. We also started outsourcing a certain few functions, and all of those experiments yielded to be positive for us. So we are continuing to do that. We started working from office say 2 months back, but we are right now in a hybrid mode. We don't work from office on a daily basis. We use office for meetings alone now, and most of our work still happens from home, and we find this efficient than before.
Thanks, Arun. Can I ask Sriram to sort of continue with this point?
Yeah, thanks. Evening, everybody. Interesting, Arun. Wow, 120% office, amazing, man. Hats off. Ours is a smaller office. Ours is an older practice. We're 31 years old now. Yeah, lockdown was mixed. First 2 months was fun. It was like something totally new, and we were enjoying staying at home and having all these Zoom calls till the fatigue set in. It was the first 2 months was good. The next 3 months were terrible. We had such a bad time, losing patience, trying to explain things over the phone. But largely, except for a couple of people, it's like, it's a very tech-friendly firm. Me being one of the guys who's not so tech-friendly. So some of us had to improve our methods of communication through digital form, which worked out fine. From a work standpoint, somehow we found that our design processes, design detailing improved tremendously during lockdown. The attention to detail, the amount of time we spent on every single detail was fantastic. Then the lack of physically meeting was a huge problem. And the biggest problem was not being able to visit site. So that was an issue, because I would say about 4 out of 10 projects were still going on, and it was hard for us to visit site. Obviously, it wasn't even possible initially, so that was hard. But by and by, we managed to work with the phone, WhatsApp, and sending comments through that manner. But we went through. Then slowly the office opened up, so we started resuming work and so on. So I'll answer this question in 3 parts. One is just to tell you how we went about doing the work and carrying on and all that. So we had some good habits that we developed during the lockdown, which was the amount of time we spent on design, detail, and discussions. So that is one learning that we're taking forward post-lockdown. We're spending a lot of time in doing that. The second part was manpower, people. So at the start of lockdown, we were about 22, 23 people. And suddenly we realized, geography was an issue. People not belonging to Chennai had to leave. And people who were staying alone, staying as paying guests and in hostels, all of them had to it was a rude shock. We were not able to handle that. So we just shrunk to about 16 people. And then we had people who wanted to study abroad. So then they came back and said, look, we're not going to leave. But then I had to tell them, I'm sorry. I think things are going to be a little tight. So you might have to take off. So these are the only people we had to kind of ask to leave. There were a couple of them at that point. So we came down to around 16. And then we, the first 3 months, like I told you, was a little, we were in a limbo. The next 3 months, and salaries after the first 3 months came down to about 70%. Then the next 3 months, things started picking up. Some projects started coming, some of them which we thought had died, woke up again. So it kind of germinated a little bit more. So our cash flow became a little better and so on. Then we struck upon a model at the end of the third 3-month period, that is 9-month period after, towards December, where we found that we needed more people. We needed our architects and our team back. And we found the people who had worked with us were coming back, and they were finding it hard to get jobs where they had gone abroad to study and stuff like that, and they were not getting, and payment of loans was an issue. So we then called them back, and we started kind of a consultancy model. So we had gotten about 3 new projects with reasonable fees, structure, and stuff like that. But we were not so sure whether this project would really take off. We didn't know how long this pandemic was going to last and so on. So then we called some of our past colleagues, came over and said that, look, you're a partner in this project. You get a percentage of our fee. And we work on this project together. You work at flexible times. You tell us when you want to come. You want to come 2 days in a week to office. Rest of the time we are virtual. However you want to handle it. But we clearly identified what our scopes would be, what our involvements would be, what our deliverables would be. And that worked beautifully. We started with one guy, and then we've got 3 more people in that manner. And it became, so these are some senior colleagues of ours now. So now they are like consultants and getting a share in the project, with the proviso that in case the project stops for some reason, then everything stops. Even there, everything stops. But we encourage them to start a practice. We encourage them to work on their own. We even try to help them out with some projects and so on. So it is a wonderful arrangement that we have, and I think we will be continuing this arrangement because I think it helps everybody. So this is one part of it. So the third part of it was the money part of it, which I'll come to later. That's the boring part. So I think I'll let you speak.
Yeah. Thanks, Shiva. Can I ask Kavita here to come in and tell us a bit about your nature of work and whether you have faced anything similar to what Sriram and Arun shared, where your issue is very different?
Sure. So most of our projects, they kind of revolve around industries, like particularly with new project development. We work along with R&Ds to develop idea and production and so on. So of course, new product development or design and initial design was the first one they stopped, right? Anything to do with research and design was stopped completely. So what we definitely had a huge setback. But I think in 2 to 3 months, industries again started working. So things started moving a little bit, but though with a huge setback of losing most of the, not losing, like put on hold, we had to scale down, including, kind of reducing the overheads and so on. But what happened was this kind of gave us some time to re-strategize what we wanted to do with the company. So I would say the most productive of the month was those first 2-3 months of where it got hit, and we re-strategized such that we could build something like a consortium of a sort, a very similar thing of what Mr. Sriram is also saying, along with our past employees, along with the other. So we kind of work with mixed people, like including mechanical designers, automobile designers, and so on. So we kind of built a consultancy format where we give everything. This consortium kind of gives everything in one roof.
Kavita, I'm just going to step in just for a clarification. So when so you said consortium, because what Sriram explained is an agreement within their own members. This is both, correct? It's both your own members and people outside your own practice. So
this is completely outside as well. That was a good question. So we do have our own employees working with us as a consultant methodology. But what I've also done is kind of, so generally when we kind of pitch for projects, we will need to kind of show a profile which has a really good expert in multiple scenarios. Like let's say one of our projects is designing a train, right? So we would need the input of a lighting designer, a mechanical engineer, an automobile engineer, an electrical engineer. So we're kind of trying to build a consortium of sort where multiple cross-disciplinary people will come in and kind of pitch for one project. So that is the kind of strategy that we are kind of building, along with a few group of professionals who are also very experienced in these specialized fields. We call ourselves specialized consultants. I will explain what that means in the later part. But the market has been recovering quite a bit, I would say. From Jan, it's been a really good part. I would say whatever we lost, it will be almost like 10 times bigger. So I would say the market is very, very good now. And this, with respect to the strategy, so far it is working very well. And right now there's no requirement for us to, kind of change. But as things goes, maybe we might take a different path.
Oh, thanks. Good to hear that market is looking good, at least for you. But it's something good to hear. Now I would just ask Vidya, and you can sort of briefly explain your work a bit, because yours is slightly different understanding. So, what was the impact of the last year?
So the pandemic was actually a very, I think largely, in retrospect, it was a very, very difficult time. And I think there were several factors that contributed to it. So one was, it was also kind of it was an interesting as well as a difficult time. There's certain contradiction associated with this as far as our work was concerned. So what happened was, a lot of there were a lot of projects on our table at that time. 2020 was actually, I think, by far our most busiest year. This is our 10th year since UDC started, and 2020 was like by far our most busiest year. Like we had close to actually 20 projects on the table. Uh, but the nature of the projects also changed because a lot of the projects were also, with public sector agencies and partnerships like government agencies, municipal corporations, state governments, and so on. So, and the pandemic kind of threw a spanner in the works because it really, disturbed all the project timelines. Like, because, with things not being open and funding not being, sanctioned or being diverted to COVID relief and so on, there was always this kind of a question mark with regard to whether the project was in or out, or whether it's whether it what were the deliverables and the timelines that were to be adhered to. So this really kind of threw us off, and along with that, even the finances. Like, so there was like work on the table, but the money was not coming. But they would we would there was never a sort of a black and white yes or no. Also, I mean, at least if we were told that the project is off, then we could move on and do something else. But it was never that way. It was kind of like in this stretched limbo, throughout the pandemic last year, and that really kind of taxed and fatigued all of us. As regards working, it became increasingly very difficult to work because our work is very, grounded. Like, it's very hands-on, and there's a lot of engagement. There's a lot of mapping, and where, I mean, the sort of initial phase, or I mean, almost half the project duration is usually spent on the ground, and not being able to access our various sites was a huge setback. We were also doing projects in other cities like Coimbatore and Hubli and Agartala and so on, Kochi, and it became very difficult to access all of these cities and sites. So there was, like, it was a very, very, very confusing time, to be very honest. And working remotely was also very taxing. We're a very, very small office. At the time of the pandemic, we had about only 5 people and myself. And I had to, I mean, tech was not a problem because team is very young. Everybody is very tech savvy. We had no issues adapting very, very quickly to tech tools that were available to work with and all of that. But it was just extremely taxing, particularly for me, because I had to individually sit with everybody, and all the work needed to be reviewed, and reviewing it online was not as exciting as it was, sitting across a table and drawing and discussing. And so those we really, really missed. And I think, but because we were a small office, I think the protocols did not sort of keep us away. As soon as lockdown relaxations happened, we all came back to office. And I think for the most part, unless there was like a strict lockdown imposed, we were, all of us work in the office. At least that was given all this sort of confusion with timelines and clients and client relationships and deliverables and everything. The least we could do was actually just stay together as a team and see how we could navigate it. That's kind of how we went about it. I don't think we will ever want to do that again. Like, it doesn't work for the kind of work that we do. Like, so we'd really, really, really like to go back to our usual way of working.
Thanks, Vidya. So did you have, so what was your firm's response?
So we unfortunately didn't get the 2 months that Sriram got as a honeymoon period. It was an extremely difficult time for us, partly because we started seeing the slowdown even before the pandemic hit, and when the pandemic hit, it kind of everything kind of completely came to a halt to a large extent, and that's also partly because we had high exposure to real estate projects at that time, and cash flows completely stopped. We lost a couple of our projects stopped in the sense got cancelled. Many of the projects got delayed. Delay is okay, but there was no clarity as to when it will open up, and that was the toughest part. So there was, especially during the first wave. So that was extremely difficult for us, and we were 30 plus architects at that point. And it's not that we became 30 plus with a clear planning or understanding of what it takes to run a 30 plus architecture practice. So in some sense, we that became like a completely it's as if someone hit on our head. So it really completely stopped many of the cash flows that came in, and that was extremely difficult to kind of go through it. And so we had to reach out to banks, take drain up our ODs, etc., and also ask people to work part-time. And something that we had to kind of do this for the few months, especially the initial few months during that first wave. And in the hindsight, there were a lot of learnings from that as well. We really started thinking deeply about the practice, especially when the second wave hit us, because we actually came out of the first wave and started getting new projects. And that at that point we came down to like Sriram was saying, a lot of people who worked with us didn't want to either come back. Some went for masters. So we came down less than 20 people at that point. And then after the first wave, a lot of projects started coming up, and then we slowly started rehiring, and then the second wave hit. And it's as if you have not learned anything. So it's and in many sense at that point we knew that we had to kind of question some of the things that we do and relook at certain aspects of the practice. And one of the things that we've consciously done in the last few months, especially not that the second wave is completely out, but after the second wave hit, is to really rebalance the typologies that we look at. We are consciously and aggressively looking at taking up interior projects, which we never used to look at earlier, because we felt that helped us, will help us with the cash flows. And those things are starting to help us now. And I think, we are slowly starting to get busy again. But we are cautious. I mean, we are not the way we used to practice earlier. We are not, although we've hired few people recently, we are not jumping into, going into hiring in a very mega scale. So we will be cautious, but at the same time, this is something that we will take forward, is to kind of really rebalance the project typologies, looking at things that helps us with the cash flows. Not to say that we look at those projects any less than any other project, but consciously look at different typologies and diversify that. And I think that hopefully will help us as we go forward.
So this whole topic is titled on innovations, changes in practice. So what I gather from most of you are that the conventional way of hiring and focusing on a very limited type of a project is not going to help particularly small firms. Two, you have to now think of different ways of employing, like for instance, what Kavita or Sriram explained, that you need to have a more flexible way of employing people. Or like what Vidya is saying, that some sectors may have the ability to withstand some prices. For example, urban projects where state funding is there. So the issue there could be once it's urban projects that you may not be able to do it because they're heavily site-based and like design sort of approach. Or as Biju says, that you have to have a sort of a basket with different kinds of projects, which has a quick turnover, produces. So there have been different ways in which each one of you has responded. I'm sure you have something more to add. We'll come to it in a moment. So I'm just going to push this question a little further. Since most of the firms in India are small firms, that's what council said, less than 28, it's about 60%, 70%. Do you think that going forward, post this experience, and also given the fact that many projects leave the expenses out, that's almost like a staple diet for most. uh, But these high revenue yielding projects are beyond the scope of, or getting beyond the scope of small firms, because the large projects require multiple services under one roof. Small firms, given the limited numbers, can't do that. But since most of you are trying to do this consortium, tie up with people, and so on and so forth, really do you think that gives you a chance to aspire for big projects? Or do you think that that is also not enough? There are a few other hurdles in this. So, Anas, did you want to say something?
Sure. I mean, I think practice in that sense, especially practicing in India, is quite challenging. You know, especially if you want to kind of, you know, we are primarily also urban designers and planners, and we are very concerned, and we always want to engage with the city and public projects, and that's in some sense ingrained with us. And there is always that effort to kind of try and figure out ways to kind of engage with these large projects. But you know, even with a 20 people practice, it's still a small practice, you know, when you look at it in that realm. And that becomes extremely difficult because, you know, if you, especially for small practices, because the prerequisites are quite high, especially for the government projects and even for private projects now. Large corporate projects are today, the process of appointing an architect is more or less very similar to how one do in a public project, you know, and it becomes extremely difficult to kind of you know, approach these kind of projects. And one thing we have done is over a period of time is to find innovative ways to kind of try and negotiate this, you know, and we've
can you explain what one of that?
So one way we're doing is that we've formed alliance with other practices, and I think we have an alliance, a formal alliance with Samir Padora and Associates and Abin Design Studio too. We formed this design alliance to kind of primarily to kind of look at large projects. And of course, this is on one side of it is the business decision. But the other side is also a sort of a deep interest to work collaboratively with other practices. And I think this is, many of us feel that when we are within our own practice, there is limited amount of critique coming from outside as well. And within our busy schedules and practices, we often end up in our own silos, and even our intellectual growth gets limited within our sort of the, you know, the areas of influence. So there is a deep interest among at least all three of us to kind of really look at, one is of course going after large projects, but also a deep interest to work collaboratively with each other. And the way we've kind of looked at this is also that
can I interrupt you just for a moment, just to clarify? So you are having a signed a consortium or an agreement with some other studios. The purpose of this consortium is to draw on expertise, or is it to sort of make you more qualified for bigger projects, sort of you share your sort of work and turnover requirements? I mean, how is it work?
Yeah, so it's multifold. Like I said, we know that each of our practices are completely different in the way we approach the project, the process, how we do the projects. All of them are completely different, and hence each of us kind of bring to a table a certain kind of value, you know, a certain kind of thinking into the project. So the one aspect of it is to kind of really you know, catch on to this expertise that each one of us kind of brings onto the table. Second is what you mentioned, is also to kind of a combined portfolio is a lot more powerful than an individual portfolio, especially when you go at a large project. And what we are essentially saying is that here you get three practices at the price of one in many sense. And the way we model this is also is that it's not that we are all kind of sitting together and doing one project. We've created a model where each practice takes up one project, and the other practices become critiques in that project. So every project, proportionate to what each practice does, the fees also get allocated proportionately to the amount of work each of these practices. So in some ways, we are also saying that we are respecting each of these practices and who they are. And for us, that was very important. And we are also doing this not just with this alliance. Architecture Red is collaborating with Urban Design Collective. We are working with Vidya on a large project with the corporation, and there is tremendous amount of learning. Besides, of course, the business side of things. And being in a creative field, I think this is where our learning comes from, and we feel that that's it, as long as there is respect with each other.
And if I go to Arun, unlike these two firms, you are a large firm with, I'm assuming, 6 partners or more. I don't know, 6 partners. So you already have a wide variety of personnel, expertise inside. Whether this kind of model will work for you, or you consciously choose your partners who have different expertise.
Right. One significant difference in the way my organization is structured is unlike most practices, the main person is not the principal architect in my organization. In my case, I'm not a principal architect. I started as the principal architect when it was a startup, and eventually I realized I can't be doing that for a long time, and so I explored the idea of training other people to be principal architects in their own might. So all the partners that we have today are, we are technically not a partnership. The entire organization's liability is still only on me. But what has happened is, all these partners who are completely self-sustainable right now, each one of them is like a cost center. They know their own costs, they know their own expenses. They try to make sure they are above their expenses. And all of these are people who joined us as junior architects, who grew with us, who learned with us, and then slowly became associates and then partners. So that way, I would say our expert, we have tried the model of hiring senior architects from outside and making them a business unit head, and that probably has not worked well for us, because I think we have a very different work approach. We are mostly into small and medium scale projects. We consciously avoid large scale projects. We consciously avoid government projects. So our strengths have evolved in creating a process which is very efficient for handling small and medium scale projects. So all these people thrive when they have been with us for a long time, and that's how it has worked for us so far. And I am of the belief that going forward, it's either the large organizations are going to survive. You can actually see consolidation happening in every industry, not just in our industry. In every industry, consolidation is happening. Like even the big tech companies, they keep acquiring smaller tech companies, and that's the only way smaller tech companies can have any profit for what they've done. So it's either, I believe going forward, it's either you do freelance or you be part of a bigger organization. If you're trying to do something in India, you're up against a big fight.
Yeah, that's a very positive statement, and thanks for saying that. So this will lead to us, Sriram. Sriram, you once told me of 30 plus firm. Okay, now you are not doing what architecture red is doing. You are only sort of making arrangements with them. But how would you see your future in terms of this challenge coming from big firms? Just like what Arun just outlined now. So do you think you can continue to practice in the manner that you're practicing, or do you think you need also to look at consortium?
Yeah, so I actually kind of differ a little bit from what Arun was saying. See, we are an old firm, as we've said, we're a 30-year-old firm, but we have always been about 20, 25 people. So I don't know whether that qualifies us as a large firm or what.
Somewhere in
so yeah, so I think size of a firm doesn't really represent capability of size of work that you could do. This is my firm belief. That apart, I also believe small firms have a tremendous future in our business. I call it the business of architectural practice. You can treat it as a business. You can treat it as a design practice.
Can you explain how you see that they have a great?
I'm not able to hear you clearly, Shivatsan. Just repeat again.
What I'm asking is, you're saying small firms have a future, a good future. Can you explain that?
So I think there is a lot of work available. There is a lot of work available in all sectors. I know that the real estate housing is probably the most visible sector. Doing houses is again another very visible sector, but there is a lot of work outside of this. I'm saying this with conviction because probably for the last 4 years, we have done very little.
The question is, residences have always been a staple diet with one small firms. But the large firms may not want to take it, but that's a staple diet. But is there a future outside residences?
That's exactly what I'm saying, Shivatsan, because the total number of residences that we have done in all our practice the last 30 years is probably 8 or 9. We've not done more than that. Not that we didn't like to do it, it's just that we haven't done. So even when we were small, even when we were young, we didn't take up residential work, doing houses. Probably we just didn't get that. But there is a lot of other work that is available. There is commercial buildings, there are industrial projects, there are schools and institutions, there are interior projects, there are landscape projects, there are various things. So I think there is an opportunity for design, and small firms can do really well. And I also see that consortiums joining up for a couple of projects and then keeping it loose. Either it is content-based synergies, or whether it is scale-based synergies, or whether it is geographical location-based synergies. I think smaller the firm, the better the, what shall we say, responsibilities and ownership of the design and the project is. So I always believe small firms will do extremely well.
But that's fine. But you mean to say large firms can't take ownership of design? I mean,
you mean to
see,
say
you're arguing in favor of.
Sorry,
I can see that you're arguing in favor of small firms taking responsibility. But with large firms, don't they take the responsibility equally?
Sure, they do. Sure, I'm not. When I'm saying this, I'm not excluding large firms from this thing. I'm not saying large firms are bad. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying, because we spoke about small firms, about being able to survive, I think there's a lot of small firms to survive. I didn't.
Okay, thanks. Now, you want to continue? No, I'm asking, you want to continue or can we move to the next place? Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Tell me again, Joseph.
I said thanks for the clarification. Do you have some more to add, or
No,
can we
no,
move
I'm
to
fine. I'm just talking about the small firm being
Sure,
very
sure.
relevant. That's all.
Okay, yeah, I take your point. Now, I'm just going to move to another point. I know this is, you can stay at one point. There's two more points I want to cover. Now, this is addressed to both Vidya and Kavita. See, now we are hearing architects saying we want to get into allied disciplines, urban, so on and so forth. We want to do different kinds of projects. But somehow get the feeling architects generally think their design education is so good, so they can probably handle any kind of projects. You know, they can do city planning, they can do fabrication, and so on. But I think some sense of inflated sense of capability is there. So both of you were working outside the realm of core building design. Did you particularly? Do you think architects are well equipped to contribute to urban projects? Or do you think no, you would rather stay away from them and work with someone else?
Yeah, I mean, this question about the design education is always the the elephant in the room, I guess. I mean, I think we all know it's not equipping us in any way. I mean, as you know, least of all as professionals to come out and start working. I think it really requires several years of maybe you may call it an apprenticeship or at least professional training or sort of professional experience working in firms that have been established for you to sort of truly call yourself whatever title you want to give yourself in this realm of architectural design. But I think just coming back to us, and I mean we as I mean, I'm an architect by training, but I don't practice architecture. Like my core area of work is urban design and planning. And as an urban designer, we never think, or rather, it's absolutely wrong and fatal to think that we are in control of everything and that we can direct this whole thing. Working as a team comes naturally to us if you want to be a good urban designer, and I believe that. And as a practice as well, we are a collaborative platform. That's what we call ourselves. We have always been a collaborative platform, and as a platform, we have engaged with several different individuals. You touched upon the sort of aspect of scale and procurement of projects, and this has helped us a lot even in that. I mean, depending on the kind of project that we are going after, we have always had a wonderful pool of people that have been associated with us that we can sort of assemble as a team and present ourselves through the strength of our technical expertise, nothing else. I mean, we don't have the turnover or the financials to show it, but we have the technical expertise to show that we are capable of doing this, even though we are a small firm. Likewise, the consortium model also is something that we have always engaged in as well, working with other offices. Personally, I don't have an issue, working as as a sub-consultant or, I mean, I think for us, it's about wanting to be, part of this ecosystem where we are doing work that is relevant and in the urban realm. So the role that we take on in the project has actually never been a matter to me personally. It's always I see every project as a way to build on our portfolio, and everything and every role that we have played in all the projects in the last 10 years has actually contributed in so many ways to what we bring forward as our technical expertise right now. And if you talk about procurement as well, I think we have always, gone after projects.
Just a minute on the procurement. We'll take that up little later.
Okay, all right.
Okay. That's a point in itself. That we will keep it as a last point because that's going to generate more conversation. Now I'm just going to move to Kavita. Kavita, do you think your work yourself as an architect and you work with architects, do you think architects by training their technological challenge, it's so difficult to, you know, they won't be your first partners. You probably want to work with engineers more.
Uh, right now, yeah, but to put it in a better way, I would definitely
Okay.
say whatever I had as a design education that came through architecture has helped me tremendously. In fact, the profession as an architect has also helped me build my profile so far. Because just to give you a small example, the first project that I got from Indian Railways was because I was an architect who knew to handle how to design for advanced manufacturing. So that was the thing that they were expecting. So that is the first build. But initially, when we started the company, it was more towards bridging design and technology for the end production. So though the design education was there was a lot of education that I took up, like say, for example, got myself trained with multiple programming languages, which helps in generation design. Like I also became a specialist and a trainer with Rhino that helps for manufacturing. Then just to give a few, with Illinois Institute, I got myself trained with 3D printing. And lots of industries here, I go and meet them personally, understand how their like CNC milling or an engraving or a robotic manufacturing happens. So there's a lot of learning. I go forward to companies and kind of tell them this is my service, and also there's a lot of engagement happening, a lot of learning from them and from me. So that I think evolves slowly at multiple folds. And yeah, through that, particularly to become a specialized consultant, you will need to build experience and also a lot of technical skills. So upskilling is a major thing, I would say. So past 5 years, every time you ask me, I will be studying something. So
Good to hear that as a teacher that is me. So I'm going to move to the next section. This is final because some needs time for questions. I request those who tune in to just type in the question in the chat box. Maybe after this point we can pick it up. So the next question, I'll start probably with Sriram. This has been a big challenge. How to get projects? How do we break into significantly large scale projects? Council is quite naive and don't sponsor projects. No firm can really survive without some. That's one part of the story. The second part of the story is there's a tremendous amount of entry barriers for small firms to get into significant projects, both in scale or in terms of its value, in both money and otherwise. Now, every architect whom I have had this conversation demands or imagines that the profession is a level playing field and we should restore it to that condition. But in truth, I've seen architecture practice as a multi-story building, and all architects are in different tiers, and there are 2, 3 layers of this. So the question is, how do firms like you, with 30 years, face this question of getting into large-scale projects? And what are your views on procurement of architecture services?
Yeah. So I'll just try to be as brief as possible because it's a really loaded question. So yeah, so like I said, our practice began small. We had, but I had a pretty senior mentor, partner, Mani, who was like 22 years senior to me, and I had worked with Doshi. And then I worked with Venkat for a year or so in Chennai before I started working with Mani. And I had all these ideas and design ideas and things like that. And I said, I won't do this, I won't do that, I don't like this and stuff like that. So at the start, Mani would always say that, look, you might have so many likes and dislikes and stuff like that. But technically, we are here to satisfy the guy across the table. And what he likes is what he wants. and you need to work on that. And if you can convince him in some way or the other, then you do so. Otherwise, you just lump it and do your job. So the first 5 to 10 years of our practice was just largely lumping what we didn't like, and we did what they liked. And what Mani also used to say is that, if you have your ideals very strong in you, then keep your feet planted on the ground. And when people listen to what you're saying, do what you can. So it just probably we didn't take the lift going up, but we took the stairs going up. So it took a while, but now we do what we like to do. And I would say that we probably score more than 6 out of 10 in most of the projects that we do, because we are able to kind of hold our ground.
So what is 6 out of 10 for?
The out of 10 that you would want to do, you manage to do 6 of your own scale. I'm not talking about the client or any other critic or anything like that. I'm just saying what you want to do, what you set out to do, what you can. So that's my thing. So now, as far as projects soliciting, we just took whatever project came our way initially. And now there is enough of references for us. So we have not solicited for work, but now we are able to kind of choose some projects sometimes. So that's our history. So I'll give it to you.
Yeah, Biju, what is your experience?
So,
were you successful in looking into big projects?
Sorry, I didn't get the last part.
I said, have you successfully broken into big projects? Have you
so we've always had large projects, not necessarily public projects. I think I want to make that distinction very clearly. Because one of the reasons we used to get, or we started getting large projects, is because we also did a lot of planning work. We are also urban designers and planners, and we start many projects with planning, and we realized that over a period of working over the years, is that, and this is also the beauty of practicing in India, is that there is you negotiate better when you look at both planning and architecture together. And when I say you negotiate better, means we negotiate density better, you create better spaces, when you kind of remove that line which divides between what planning and architecture. And that's also because of the way our building regulations are written, our bylaws are everywhere in the country, it always kind of lead to that creation of that object. And when you start to kind of blur that line between both of them, you start to actually create something much more meaningful. And in the process, you also create better density and better organized density. And I think at some level, we were able to communicate this to our clients. And we do a lot of housing projects because we also, we very strongly believe, and in fact, in the initial years, we were doing only institutional projects. And we very strongly believe that, as planners and urban designers, if we are concerned about the city, we need to engage with one of the largest group of people who are actually creating our cities. And for us, engaging with housing was very important. So that, because we did a lot of planning work, through that planning work, we also demonstrated better ways of organizing density, getting into architecture, creating much more meaningful spaces. And that led us to kind of get a lot more architecture projects. And that is how we, in fact, we were using, instead of going and asking for work through our planning projects, we all automatically started getting a lot of large scale architecture projects. And that kind of really helped us. Public projects is a completely different game. I mean, you have to go through these processes, the procurement process, and there are many challenges there, in the sense that, most of the RFPs are written not for you, but for the sort of the large 5 firms or 10 firms out there. And you're constantly, trying to negotiate that. And we have not been able to be successful. In fact, one of the competitions we won for the National Law School in Bangalore, it was an open competition. We participated, we won a few years back. and that also hasn't taken off the ground, so public projects has been challenging for us. But a lot of our clients are returning clients today. I mean, we don't have too many, even with developers, we don't have too many developers whom we work with, but with whom we work, we do a lot of work. And that is not because we don't get other projects now, it's also because there are limitations for our practice, because both me and Kishore are invested in every project that we do. And see, a lot of these things eventually comes down to how we structure the practice, and that itself offers a certain amount of limitations, and we have to figure out systems that works with it.
Okay. That's glad for good to hear. I hope you get your Bangalore project soon. Go ahead. For Arun and Vidya, I want to request you to answer the second part of the question. Have you faced these turnover requirements and other stringent entry barriers in your practice? And how have you dealt with it, if you have faced it? Arun, have you faced these entry-level barriers for public projects and turnover requirements, which is really a big problem for many firms? If you have faced it, how have you done?
We have faced some stringent entry-level parameters, turnover requirements, mainly when we deal with corporate interior projects. Otherwise, most of our projects are mainly residential, and we haven't faced those. Also, since it is when it comes to residential projects, I believe the field is more of a level playing field. You don't have in spite of us being totally new to Chennai, not having any background with architecture or construction, not having enough contacts, all those don't matter for residential projects. You are truly on a level playing field when you deal with residential projects. So we've always felt those things have never affected our practice.
Okay. Can I turn to Vidya? Vidya, how has it been for you? Because urban projects are really large-scale projects.
Yeah, I mean, as a small firm that wants to do big projects, this is always a problem for us. I mean, minimum turnovers, I don't know how many years it will take for us to qualify for those things. But like I said, I think what we've done is we've worked around it through consortiums. I think mainly what we focused on is building our technical expertise, so that even in a consortium, we are not one of those people that are on the bottom of the list of team members that's required, but we're actually the more technically sound partner in the consortium. In most of the times when we're bidding, we know that we have an important role to play in the project, and it's only the financials that is keeping us out. And the nature of the consortiums we form are also the same, where there is that mutual respect and understanding of each other's skills and expertises, and so that's how we have figured out a way to work around it. The other thing is I think this is like what Sriram was alluding to earlier when he was talking about small firms, and that there are many different kinds of projects and work out there, and that it's just there is enough for everyone. I think that's another thing. Like we are always on the lookout for projects that usually have only a technical qualification requirement. You have the QCBS mode of procurement as well, which is primarily based on quality. It's a 75% weightage for quality and 25% on the financial. Whatever we have bid for, we have always bid for if it is that kind of a procurement only. And even any other procurement in general itself, we don't go for those L1 procurements because those kind of compromise quality, in my opinion. But yeah.
Just I want to interrupt you. 75-25 in favor of technical scientific. Has it really been a good model, or do you think a lot more weightage has to be given to technical, something like 80-20 or something? Just a quick thought, then we can move on to that.
So I didn't hear you very well, but
What I'm asking is that 70-30 is a better model, or do you think it should be a more 80-20?
Oh, we would like it to be 80-20. Obviously, I think we bring more technical than financial to the table. So, but I think so far what we've seen is most of them do 75-25. At least the ones that we have gone for have all been 75-25, and I mean, thankful for that at least.
Actually, if I can add something here, so if I can add something here, yeah. So with respect, I've not worked with the Tamil Nadu government, but with the central government, the amendments have changed quite a bit. And particularly, there are two kinds of bids. One which goes with material and goods that are tangibles, and another which is intangible. So if there is a technical consultant who's coming in after Make in India, the amendments have changed such that around 60% is given for experience. Another 25% is given for your qualification, what your technical qualification is, and only a minimum of 15% is actually given for the financials. So this is actually for projects which are below 50 lakhs of consultancy fee, right? So in a way, I think most startups are actually kind of pitching these guys. Like ISRO has the same one, our defense has the same kind of amendment. So in all these places, I've actually seen, why I want to also kind of put this forward is I've seen the requirement of architectural services as well. So in a way, we can also kind of tap that potential there.
So you mean to say that this model should be used in architecture services? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, there is definitely a requirement from there as well. You would notice it in the GEM marketplace if if you put in your expertise as an architect, as an interior designer, as a product designer. So there's a very clear mention of all these criteria. It's a 2017 amendment actually.
Oh, thanks for the information. I just want to go to questions from listeners. There are two questions. The first one I'll pitch it to Arun and Sriram. The second one is addressed to Pichu. So Sundar Devan is asking, most construction activity are happening without consultants. Would a common minimum standard of delivery process, basically delivering the fundamentals right, would be helpful for professionals? And in this case, it's not only blaming the clients here. How do you raise the standard of trained professionals to meet what is being asked of the professionals? Sriram, do you want to go first?
From what I understand from the question, I was reading it also. If you take the design aspect out of it, he's talking about the quality of construction and the deliverables and stuff like that. So for sure, you need trained professionals to do that. You need experience. You need trained professionals to do that. So what he means is the standard of the trained professionals. It needs to be raised. This is what I understand. So I'm saying, as far as the construction industry is concerned, it's probably one of the largest industries in the region. So there is enough of work and there is enough of training that's going on over there. Probably what we need to concentrate on is supervision of this of the construction activity, and if that is handled with more care, if we have an institute or an institution for supervising and supervisors to see what standards to maintain and so on, I'm sure our quality of work will improve. And this is a interesting thing about this question is it's not even talking about designers here. So I think supervision is what needs a lot of attention.
Arun, you're on mute.
Yes, I'm sorry. So I believe there is a huge gap, when huge gap between design and construction. All architects are extremely equipped to design well, but most of the time they actually shy away from the responsibilities involved in construction. And that gap is not really filled by anyone in the society as well. When it comes, say the client hires an expert construction company, the construction company has a handicap in trying to understand what the architect wants, and there is always a ego clash in taking the decisions. And there are a few decisions that the construction guy has to take, which might not go well with the design of the architect. So this gap invariably messes up with the quality of the product delivered. I believe, like if architects, get out of their comfort zone and start thinking systematically, take it on them to make sure the construction needs are met in terms of scheduling, in terms of quality. Overall, I think we might see a better landscape in terms of architecture and interiors.
You're on mute, Srivatsan.
This question is from Vijay. Can you elaborate on the consortium you have formed with Sameep and Abhi? Is there a financial tie-up as well? And specifically, how do you work together, like sharing resources, design standards, paperwork, and so on? Biju, you want to respond?
Yeah, so there are two sides. One is the financial side and how we work together. So I'll briefly explain how we came together, primarily because there was a large corporation which was looking to kind of allocate some of their large projects, and they floated a competition. And then we came together and we said, let's participate it together. That's how the idea originally started. And through the process, of course, all three firms were participating in it, but there were multiple projects at that point. So what we've decided is that each practice will take one project, and we will, the other practice becomes periodic critique to that project. So it is driven by a particular practice. And in the process, we actually ended up winning two of the competitions. And so one of the projects is driven by our office right now. One is driven by Sameep's office. And it is in our office, it runs as if it's like any other project, and the other partners come in periodically to critique and kind of take stock of things and kind of comment on what they feel should be changed. But the design decisions largely remains with the practice that is running it. But of course, there is, like I said earlier, there's a deep respect for others' expertise, and we kind of incorporate that and debate that and kind of incorporate that as part of the project. The way we have financially structured is that what we have decided is that, so we have a new firm which kind of takes up these projects. So we have a combined portfolio. We have a new collaborative practice under which we takes up these projects, and then that practice even then subconsulted to whichever the practice which is driving it. So a large majority of the fees goes to that practice which runs that project. A percentage of the fees goes to the design alliance itself, and there is a small percentage of fees for the firm which brings in the project to the alliance. So we've kind of structured it in that threefold, so it's not necessary that architecture red brings a project to that alliance and architecture do that project. Depending on the location, first is that if a particular practice is located in a particular region, it's natural that firm takes the lead. But there are also expertise, and there are also, like for right now, both the projects that we are doing are in Bombay or in outskirts of Bombay, and hence we kind of divided it. And there is a fourth component, which is a local architect component. So the idea is that even if say Sameep's practice do a project in Chennai, we become it is driven by Sameep's practice, but we become the local architect. So there's a component of the fees then get shared by the design practice with that. So we've kind of structured it like that so that it's proportionate to the work allotted. Secondly, it also respect each of the practices and the strengths of each of the practices and what they bring on board, and allow these practices to work independently without really in the, collaborative practice is not about, all of us sit together and do the same design. It's about, there still needs to be design leadership that needs to come into this, and then the critique comes as a layer, and that's kind of how we structure. Some of it is also through the working process during the competition, we evolved it. It's not that we structured or thought through it right at the beginning, but it got evolved because of the way we were working as well.
Oh, and that sounds quite a fascinating arrangement. We'd like to hear about this probably after a year from now. So let us know how well this goes. The last question is from Anup Menon. What would be each of the practices giveaway based on their experience in this pandemic lockdown as a future to practice? What would you give up? What would you not do? We are all saying what we are doing. What you may not do given this experience. Just a brief answer, one last round, as brief as you can. I mean, you can choose not to answer also, but in case if you have something to answer.
I'll just go first. I'll collect my skills for the stage I have worked before I give any more work.
Okay. That's a very perennial problem, I'm sure. Arun, anything?
I interpreted the question as a giveaway, now rather than give up. I thought the person is asking for one single giveaway that we gained through the experience during COVID.
Okay.
So if that is the interpretation, I'm saying, look outside just architecture design and interior design, because there are evolving fields. Especially, I would want to specifically mention about user experience design for digital products, including softwares. I think architects are really well equipped to handle that. And I don't see any other mainstream education out there which is as equipped as architects to handle that. So I know like many successful digital design firms are run by architects globally. So that is one area where you can focus. But in general, in principle, I would say start coming out of just built environment design alone. Maybe even look into project management. Maybe look into product design. And when you combine your efforts on these two, you are actually opening new opportunities. And that can help you during times of crisis like this.
Thanks, Arun. Quick words from the other three, if you have any.
So if I can add, I think I have two things which I personally face. So one, the main thing would be to not have too many overheads, which I had. So that is the first thing. But secondly, I would say having multiple revenue streams. Like for the past 2-3 years, I've been working on that, kind of like in my field, there is design consultation. I train corporate teams. I advise for R&D teams. I go in as an advisory. So having multiple revenue streams, I think, is a very, very important one, particularly at this point of time.
Vidya and Viju.
Vidya, you give up.
This is, I think this is the most toughest question in this discussion. I don't know, actually. I mean, I always keep thinking back to see what we could have done differently. And I can't see this playing out any other way. But I think one thing that, I think we had one bad experience, and pandemic actually made that worse. And in the manner in which I tried rectifying that going forward is just, paying a little more attention to the contractual agreements with your client, like to account for all these, crazy things that could happen. I feel like that's something that we took away as, going forward, just make sure that there's enough provisions, make sure that there's enough cushions, and we spent all of last year doing plan, B, C, D, E, F. So I think, that's it kind of helped us, stay afloat, and I guess that's what it would be then.
Oh, thanks. Viju.
Yeah, so I mean, like Vidya said, I don't know how much of it we can give up and change, because we do this for a reason. We enjoy what we do, and I mean, if we have to change ourselves to do what we like, I don't know how much we can change. Of course, there are things we improve upon. I talked about it earlier, the idea of diversifying, looking at new typologies, etc. But we also, at some level, I think for us, there is a sort of a belief that, especially design practices are, individual driven, personality driven. And when I say individual driven, it's not one person, but maybe a collective of people with similar thought process, etc. And you can't remove them from the practice, or you can't remove that thinking from the practice. And hence, there's only so much a system can help, and systems can help in kind of making it better. But for us, it is what we make is what the practice is all about. And for our primarily job is to train the next generation of people who believes in similar kind of thinking, and bring them on board and work with same kind of work ethic, rigor, passion, etc. And take it to a point wherever it goes. And for everything else, we are creating a machine, and for us design is not that. I mean, I think creativity doesn't come from that kind of a system generation, and we are interested in the deep thinking of what we make, and we want to make sure that what we do is thoughtful, meaningful, and engaging. So
Thank you, Biju. I think that's a nice way to close this conversation. There's a thank you note for the listeners. To me, this whole conversation tells me two things. One, the story of practices in this country is not fully told. So there's so much of emphasis on design, and probably the Ahmedabad, Bombay, Delhi access one. There's a lot happening around this country, and there are a lot of interesting stories, and that needs to be told, or must be heard. Second, to me, which is more important, or rather equally important, is what this shows is, while the collectives, architecture collectives have failed. Here, when I say architecture collective, I mean architecture association. Collective bodies which are mandated to think about all these issues. How do we move things forward? What are the support systems? How do you facilitate these innovations? Well, that may have failed substantially. I mean, I make that conclusion. But what gives me hope is looking at how firms have sort of come up with their own innovations, ways of not just surviving, but also, as most of you have said, that you're in this business because you're committed to design and doing something, build a good built environment. So how that drives, though the collective may have failed, individual practices are actually driving the discipline. Because slowly people are losing hope on academic institutions. There's not much to write about research in architecture. So it looks the practice of architecture, particularly small, medium-sized firms, as much as maybe the large firms, are really keeping this discipline going in this country. And there is plenty to hear, listen, write, and take it back into education. So with that, let me stop. And it's been wonderful talking to all of you. And I mean, it's quite, I'm sure many of them were listening, quite, what do you call that, surprised, pleasantly, looking at the different ways in which you have been practicing. Thanks again for sharing. Thank you, Kat, for organizing, and Sarah for all the coordination and following and fixing up time. And so thank you. Till we meet next time soon.
thank you, Watson.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.